All right, everybody, let's give this a shot. This is going to be my first video blog on my backyard garden. I figured I'd start by giving you guys a tour, let you know how I've got my backyard set up, what I've got going on here, and then see what we can, grow over this summer. And hopefully longer. This has been a project about a year in the making, and so I'm kind of excited to show it off. I know some of you have been seeing pictures on Facebook as I've built garden beds and organized my yard and picked out what I wanted to plant. So we will start with how I've got my setup, and then I'll go into what I've got planted. So, give me a second. Alright, so here we can see the first garden bed that I built. It's kind of in the shade right now, but we are still at the very beginning of March. I built this one last year. This was all Kim would approve in the budget, but that's a whole separate issue. I've since moved on and added 2 more garden beds of the exact same size. Now these are 8-foot by 3-foot garden beds, and they stand 2 feet tall from the ground. The 8-foot by 3-foot, that is the interior dimension, that's not the exterior dimension. So if you actually include the exterior dimension, you're actually looking at about 3.5 by about 8.5 feet. I used plain pine 2x4s. I didn't get pressure treated. I realized that typically that's what people recommend if you're going to have it outdoors in the elements. But this is Arizona, and as I can show you later, I've had 2x4s in my backyard for years now. Now, admittedly, they haven't been in the ground, they haven't been exposed to a ton of water, but needless to say, they hold up pretty darn well. So I went with that. I was going to use metal corrugated paneling, but then when I was looking at it, this plastic or fiberglass seems okay, so we're gonna try. Each bed was about 130 or so to build, so I'm not looking at a ton of expense, and easily replaceable or repeatable if needed. So along the back, as you can see, I've got 2 16-foot cattle panels. Unfortunately, they do not stretch all the way across, and there is a little bit of a gap that I kind of closed off with some 16 gauge wire. You can see that right there. It's not as pretty, but that's basically to give some trellising for the vegetables. Here you can see I've got a shade sail. The plan is to add about 4 more of those, which will end up kind of in a trapezoid going down the length of the garden beds. Because even though a lot of these plants are going to require full sun, this is Arizona. So everything that I have been reading and seeing says that you don't necessarily need all of the full sun in Arizona. It will get enough through the shade. So that's what I'm planning on trying. The cattle panels were neat, got them pretty cheap, about $25 a piece at Tractor Supply Company. Luckily we're not too far from one of those out in Queen Creek, and so that's what I've got there. Alright, now as you come around the backyard, we've got a pretty good sized backyard. So that's the other 3 walls in the backyard. But then you'll see I've got 3 other spots back here. So The first one is this. This was sort of an accident. I want to try planting flowers and stuff that will attract, you know, bees and birds and pollinators and whatnot to the garden. I figure if they have something in one area, they may notice everything else going on. And my wife asked if she should just put, so I'd already cleared out this area, and she'd asked if she should just put some potting soil down and plant some sunflowers, and I said yes, that's what's going to go there. Fully intending to build some smaller boxes, but I didn't articulate that, so it's basically my fault. But basically we have potting soil on the ground, but we do have some sunflowers that are starting to come up, so I'm pretty happy with that. This is one of the first things that we put down as seed that's coming up, so kind of excited to see what's going to go there. As we move over, this one is actually brand new. I just built this morning. Yeah, sorry. Surprise. Forgot to turn off my watch. Anyways, just built this morning. In here, I've got some of my growing in the garden mix here, and this I'm actually going to put strawberries in. We have some in just like a growing pot, but my wife wants a few more strawberries and we needed a little bit bigger area. So these are some of those 2x4s that I was talking about that had been sitting in the backyard. I tried building a workbench that I could use for woodworking and stuff and just leave outside, and it didn't work. The frame was great. The frame was sturdy. The frame was actually in my backyard for about 5 or 6 years, but it basically just took over our patio. Couldn't do anything out there because of it. And so I finally just tore it apart a couple of weeks ago, and now it's a couple of these small garden boxes. This was not pressure treated wood. It did receive like a Thompson's water seal. I forget exactly what I put on it, but it has also been sitting out for, like I said, about 5 years since that was done. So personally, I'm not too worried about chemicals. I may be wrong. Let me know in the comments. So, and then this was the first one I did. These L frames on the side were from that original workbench. I just opted to put those on the edge and use that to build the box. This is a little bit smaller than the one I just showed you. The other one is about 24 inches interior dimensions. This one is about 22 interior dimensions, just 22 inches square. And so far, the plan here is to do a Three Sisters growing. Three Sisters is an old, I've heard it called Native American, but I've also heard that it may have been used in other places. So whoever invented it thousands of years ago, great job, guys. But I'm gonna give a go at it and we'll see how it works. But basically, Three Sisters is a combination of corn, beans, and squash or melon. We're probably gonna end up doing watermelon for ours. But the premise is you plant the corn, and then when the corn gets to about 6 to 12 inches tall, because it has a very sturdy, very rigid stalk, you use the corn basically as a trellis for the beans. And then the beans, you plant those a couple of weeks after you plant the corn, and the beans will use the corn to grow up. And then you plant the melons or the squash underneath, basically kind of shade and ground cover. And then on top of that, they're supposed to be beneficial as far as what nutrients they take up and what nutrients they put back into the soil. So I have no idea if I'm gonna make it work, but we will try and we'll see, and we'll have some fun with it. So there's that. So that's what we have in the garden so far. Actually, I can show you a little bit more. We do have some pots. I put some pavers in between my garden beds because I wanted to be able to put stuff in pots, things that I wanted to grow but that I didn't want, you know, basically taking over the beds. Things like cilantro or strawberries that, you know, as delicious and wonderful as they are, they're basically weeds. So I've got one set of pots here. My wife wanted some snapdragons because they were pretty and hopefully will attract some pollinators. That's the current set of strawberries. We've got 3 of those plants, but we're gonna move those over to that small garden box that I showed you. And then over here in the large pot we have just regular wildflowers. And then we also, in the smaller pots, we have some lavender, basil, parsley, and cilantro. Except for the basil, we're kind of wondering about 3 of these. We put the seeds down, but they haven't really been doing much. So we're gonna find out. We are very new to this. I have been studying and reading for the last year, but obviously doing is a lot different. So, all right. Anyways, so that's what I've got. You put up with me for about 12 minutes. Please forgive all of the weeds and the growths in the yard. You know, it was winter. We didn't take care of it. But anyways, I'm excited to see what happens. I hope you all, give me just a second. All right, sorry about that. So anyways, I'm excited to see what happens. I hope you all, you know, enjoy following me along on this project. And yeah, let's grow some food. See you next time. Thanks.